A viewer says they're getting a lot of requests from library staff for signage, and they're a little worried about walking that line between good customer service and signs. I know you know what I'm talking about. I have some tips to help out with that balance in this episode of the Library Marketing Show. Hi, everyone. I'm Angela Hursh from superlibrarymarketing.com. If you haven't been to the website before, I welcome you to go there. You can sign up to receive notifications, or you can nominate your library or someone else's library for something fun, interesting, remarkable in library marketing. For our Kudos Award, just look for the Library Marketing Show tab and send me as much info as you can. We're going to start today's episode with our kudos. I love to highlight libraries and their marketing, and today we're going to give kudos to Nassau County Public Library. They have sent out their end of summer statistics email in a super cute infographic style, very clear, lots of nice white space, very easy to understand, a few fun calls to action at the bottom. I just think this is really cute and a great way to wrap up summer reading and remind people of the impact of the library, soften the ground for those donations for next year's summer reading program. Great job, Nassau County Public Library. And now for today's topic. You probably get requests all the time for signs. Maybe these signs are for events and programs, but a lot of times they are to tell patrons things like no drinking in the computer lab, or our makerspace printer is down. And I often feel like maybe a sign is sometimes used as a crutch in place of personal interaction. That's a hard line for us as library marketers to walk. Let's go through some things to keep in mind when you are facing these requests. There are some things that signs can help with. They certainly can help with reinforcement of policies. They can help with a clear and consistent message and sharing of information. Sometimes a sign can help with language barriers, especially if you're putting up signs in different languages to serve your community specifically. I think that's a really good use of a sign. And, you know, if there's a part of your library day where you're just slammed, lots of people are coming in, like let's say right after school, and your library is right next to a school, you might get a whole influx of teenagers or kids in your building. And if you have just a few members of staff, a sign can really help with efficiency. Those are the reasons to put up signs. There are some potential, I don't want to call them pitfalls, but some things to consider that may be negative about signage. First of all, a lot of signs, using a sign, pointing to a sign instead of talking to someone about a policy or procedure can be perceived as rude or impersonal. And I don't think that's the tone or focus that you want to be creating in your library. Also, sometimes we can get a little over-reliant on signs. We might feel like it's easier to point to a sign than to have a conversation with a patron. But we know those conversations are where lasting connections are made. And so I would just say, check yourself and your staff members and try to find a balance between using signs and talking to your patrons. And I want you to have some flexibility, but also to set some guidelines. So if you're the library marketer, if you're in charge of figuring out who gets signs and when's, you probably should set down some guidelines. AI can help you with that. You can ask it for suggestions on how to write guidelines for signage use, and then you can tweak it to match the circumstances of your library. Guidelines are really important that you can point to, that everyone on your staff knows, here's when we use signs, and here's when we don't use signs. I hope that's helpful for this viewer. I am very curious, does your library have a signage policy? How do you handle this difficult balance? I'm sure my viewer would appreciate it if you would share your expertise and advice down in the comments. And that's it for today's episode, but my channel is full of other tips for library marketing. If you want to learn more, and I hope you do, head on over to this next video. I'll meet you there.